This is my third attempt at trying to duplicate the Trader Joe's triple ginger snaps, and even though they're not exact, they are pretty delicious. You'll need 225 grams of all-purpose flour, a half teaspoon of baking soda, 100 grams of butter, 100 grams of palm sugar, which I found it's easiest to process by grating it, and you'll also do the same for a nice sized finger of fresh ginger, which I'd roughly say will grate to be about 1 tablespoon. You'll also need about 1/4 cup of chopped candied ginger, and lastly 1 teaspoon of ground ginger. Begin by grating the palm sugar into a large mixing bowl. Palm sugar is a more diabetic-friendly sugar, if that's a dietary restriction you may have. Then add the butter and proceed to cream it together. I use a fork because I found that a whisk holds on to too much of the butter and sugar when it's all said and done. Next, begin to sift in the flour a half cup at a time, as well as the baking soda and ground ginger, combining this as thoroughly as possible. Continue by combining another half cup of flour and then grating in the fresh ginger. One thing to keep in mind is that the fresh ginger is going to add moisture, not to mention the fact that the palm sugar is also a bit moist. So just as if you were baking a cake, in the end you may end up adding more or less flour to make sure that the cookie dough ends up with a nice consistency. The third and final ginger addition will be the chopped candied ginger. Add the final bit of flour, making sure that it is fully mixed in, and then transfer the dough to a long double sheet of plastic wrap, parchment paper, or a Teflon baking sheet like I'm using. Form the dough into an even tube, keeping in mind the diameter you want the cookies to have. Place the tube in the refrigerator for at least a half hour or until you're able to make sharp, firm slices. I would say that you can slice the cookies as thin as you'd like. The thinner you slice them, the crisper they'll be. But also note that if you do make them thinner, you'll need to adjust the baking time. And I only made 2 dozen, but because there isn't very much butter in these, they wouldn't spread very much on their own, so I used the butt of a spoon to flatten them out a bit. Place the pan in a 350-degree preheated oven on a mid-level rack and bake for 12 to 14 minutes. I did allow these to bake a bit longer because again, the moisture from the fresh ginger root and the palm sugar has to be absorbed and fully cook out. These are a nice and light cookie with just enough sweetness that the spice is just right.